Sir, that's a significant amount of cash. I need to know where it came from. This doesn't
The
appear.
money is mine. It's from a private equity transaction, a partial sale of a business interest I own. Everything is fully documented.
Keep your hands on the counter.
They haven't moved.
Don't move them. Don't
I'm
reach
here
for
to
anything.
deposit the funds.
Security bodycam footage from inside Redwood Federal Savings, a downtown branch on the east side of Cleveland, captures the moment an ordinary banking visit quietly begins to unravel. What starts as a standard cash deposit turns tense within minutes, triggered not by policy but by perception. No one inside the branch realizes yet that the man being questioned is far more connected to the institution than anyone behind the counter understands. Before we go any further, comment where you're watching from and subscribe. Tomorrow's story will make this moment impossible to forget. At Teller Station 4, Rachel Monroe, age 36, is finishing paperwork when she notices the customer approaching. She has worked at Redwood Federal for just over 10 years and has built a reputation among coworkers for being by the book. Former supervisors described her as rigid. Internal records show several customer complaints over the years, each alleging unfair treatment. All were dismissed as misunderstandings. None resulted in formal discipline. The customer waiting calmly in front of her is Calvin D. Mercer, 49 years old. He keeps a low public profile, rarely gives interviews, and avoids attention. His wealth comes from long-term investments in transportation infrastructure and regional development projects. He is carrying a compact leather satchel, walking with the ease of someone accustomed to financial institutions and boardrooms alike. When Calvin reaches the counter and places a sealed envelope on the surface, Rachel's demeanor shifts. She does not offer a greeting. Identification, she says flatly. Calvin slides his driver's license forward. Rachel examines it longer than necessary. Her eyes move from the ID to the satchel. How much cash is that? She asks. $185,000, Calvin replies evenly. Rachel leans back in her chair. And where did that money come from? A completed business sale, Calvin answers. I have documentation. Rachel does not ask to see it. That's a large amount of cash, she says. We don't typically process deposits like that. Calvin keeps both hands visible on the counter. Which policy prevents it? He asks. I need authorization, Rachel replies. I can't handle this right now. She does not stand. She does not reach for a phone. Instead, she glances toward the security desk. Within seconds, Mark Delgado, a contracted security officer in his early 40s, approaches and positions himself directly behind Calvin, close enough to be felt. There's a concern, Rachel says. Suspicious cash. Calvin turns his head slightly. I'm making a deposit. Sir, Mark says, stepping closer. Keep your hands where I can see them. They haven't moved, Calvin replies. Nearby, another customer, white, middle-aged, finishes a cash withdrawal and exits without interruption. Calvin looks back at Rachel. I'd like to speak with the branch manager. Rachel presses the call button under the counter and turns Calvin's ID face down. We're not proceeding with this deposit today, she says. Mark remains in place, partially blocking the lobby path. You need to cooperate, he adds. I am cooperating, Calvin replies calmly. I'm waiting for the manager. The branch grows quieter, conversation slow. Several customers begin watching. Moments later, Daniel Reeves, the branch manager, steps out from the back offices and walks toward Teller Station 4, unaware that the decision already made at this counter has set something in motion the bank will soon lose control of. Daniel Reeves reaches the teller line and stops beside Station 4. He is 47, wearing a charcoal suit with a Redwood Federal badge clipped neatly to his jacket. His eyes go first to Rachel, not to the customer. What's the issue? He asks. Rachel answers quickly, her tone practiced. He's attempting to deposit a large amount of cash, $185,000. I informed him we couldn't proceed without authorization. Daniel nods once, then turns his attention to Calvin for the first time. Sir, I'm the branch manager, he says. There seems to be a concern with your transaction. Calvin meets his gaze without hostility. I'm depositing cash into my account. I was told there's a policy issue, but no one has identified which policy. Daniel glances at the satchel, then at Mark standing close behind Calvin. That's a significant sum, Daniel says carefully. We have to be cautious. Cautious in what way? Calvin asks. I offered documentation. Daniel looks back at Rachel. Did he provide anything? He said he had paperwork, Rachel replies. But the situation didn't feel right. Daniel turns back to Calvin. Sir, where did these funds originate? From a finalized business transaction, Calvin replies. They're legitimate and fully documented. What kind of business? Daniel asks. A private equity divestment, Calvin says. Daniel's expression tightens almost imperceptibly. We'll need to review that before accepting the deposit. That's fine, Calvin replies. Who's reviewing it? Daniel hesitates. Compliance. Have they been contacted? Calvin asks. Not yet, Daniel admits. But before we do that, I need you to step aside. You're holding up the line. Calvin looks past him. The line behind is moving normally. I'm not holding up the line, he says. I'm at the counter. Daniel's tone firms. Sir, I need you to cooperate. I am cooperating, Calvin replies. I'm asking for the policy being applied. Mark steps in closer. You heard the manager move away from the counter. Calvin turns slightly toward him. I'm speaking with the manager. Daniel raises a hand not toward Mark but toward Calvin. Let's keep this calm. It has been calm, Calvin says. Rachel interjects. He's refusing instructions. Calvin looks at her. I asked a question. Daniel exhales and lowers his voice. Given the amount of cash and the circumstances, we're not comfortable proceeding today. Based on what? Calvin asks. Daniel avoids the question. We're placing a temporary restriction until compliance reviews this. You can't restrict a deposit you haven't accepted, Calvin replies. Daniel stiffens. We can restrict activity if there are concerns. What concerns? Calvin asks. Daniel gestures vaguely toward the satchel. Large cash transactions raise red flags. They don't when policy is followed, Calvin says. A customer near the waiting area lifts a phone slightly, recording. Daniel notices but continues. Sir, if you refuse to comply, we'll have to escalate. To whom? Calvin asks. Corporate, Daniel replies. Compliance. That's fine, Calvin says. Call them. Daniel blinks, surprised. He pulls his phone from his pocket and steps a few feet away, turning his back slightly to the counter. Behind him, Rachel leans toward Mark and mutters, "They're always like this." Calvin hears it. He says nothing. Daniel returns a minute later. Compliance needs your account information. Calvin slides his bank card across the counter. Daniel studies it, then picks up the ID Rachel had placed face down earlier. He turns it over and types into the terminal at the manager's station. His typing slows. He stops. He looks at the screen again. Rachel notices. Is there a problem? Daniel doesn't answer. He picks up the phone again and walks farther away, lowering his voice. Mark shifts uneasily. What's going on now? I don't know, Rachel says, but something's wrong. Calvin remains still at the counter, hands visible, posture unchanged. When Daniel returns, his expression has changed. Sir, he says carefully, I need to confirm something. Go ahead, Calvin replies. Have you conducted prior business with Redwood Federal? Yes, Calvin says. For years, Daniel nods slowly. And you confirm these funds are from a private equity transaction? That's correct. Daniel looks from the screen to Rachel, then to Mark. We're pausing this interaction, he says. Compliance is escalating this to legal. Rachel's eyes widen. Legal? Daniel doesn't answer her. He turns back to Calvin. Please remain here. Calvin nods once. The satchel remains untouched on the counter as Daniel walks quickly back toward the offices, phone pressed to his ear, unaware that the name he just entered has already triggered alarms far beyond this branch. Daniel Reeves disappears behind the frosted glass door leading to the back offices, his phone still pressed to his ear. The door closes softly, but the silence it leaves behind feels heavy. The teller line stalls. Rachel remains standing beside her terminal, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Mark no longer speaks. He shifts his attention to the lobby, scanning customers rather than the man at the counter. The envelope of cash remains exactly where it was placed. Untouched, minutes pass. Whispers ripple through the waiting area. A woman near the seating section pretends to scroll on her phone while angling the camera towards Station 4. A man near the entrance glances at the security officer, then back at Calvin, sensing that something unusual is unfolding. Calvin does not move. When Daniel returns, his pace is quicker. His phone is no longer in his hand. His posture is more rigid than before. Rachel, he says sharply, step away from the terminal. She looks up, confused. What? Step away, he repeats. Reluctantly, she slides her chair back and stands. Daniel takes her place at the terminal without explanation. Mark straightens instinctively. You can step back, Daniel tells him. Mark hesitates, then takes 2 steps away from Calvin, creating space for the first time since arriving. Daniel places both hands on the counter and looks directly at Calvin. Mr. Mercer, he says. Calvin nods. Yes, we're verifying information associated with your account. This may take a few additional minutes. That's fine, Calvin replies. Daniel turns his attention back to the terminal. He types slowly now, deliberately. He scrolls, pauses, scrolls again. His eyes move carefully across the screen, no longer rushed. Behind him, Rachel watches closely. What's happening? She asks quietly. Daniel doesn't answer. A phone rings in the back office, then another. Daniel picks up the desk phone beside him. Yes, he says. This is Daniel Reeves. He listens, nodding once. I see. His posture stiffens. Yes, understood. He lowers his voice. I'll keep him here. Daniel hangs up and exhales slowly. Rachel shifts her weight. Daniel, when was the last time you reviewed the shareholder registry? He asks without turning around. Rachel frowns. That's not part of my role. Daniel doesn't respond. He types again. Calvin remains still. Another call comes in. Daniel answers immediately. Yes, legal is on. He listens longer this time. Yes. I'm looking at it now. His eyes flick toward Calvin briefly. Majority position, he repeats quietly. The word lingers. Rachel's expression tightens. Majority of what? Daniel covers the phone with his hand. Step back, he tells her. Mark shifts uneasily. Is there an issue? Daniel looks at him. There was a mistake. He returns to the call. Understood, will comply. He sets the phone down carefully, straightens his jacket, and turns to face Calvin again. Mr. Mercer, he says, lowering his voice, there appears to have been an error in how this interaction was handled. Calvin's expression doesn't change. I mentioned that earlier, Daniel nods once. You are listed as a controlling shareholder in Redwood Federal Savings. The words land without drama. Rachel's eyes widen. That can't be right. It is, Daniel replies flatly. Mark takes another step back. Compliance and legal are reviewing the incident now, Daniel continues. Your deposit? No, Calvin says calmly. Not here, Daniel hesitates. Sir, we can process it immediately. You won't, Calvin replies. Not at this branch. Silence settles. Rachel speaks softly, defensively. I didn't know who he was. Calvin looks at her for the first time. That wasn't the point. Daniel clears his throat. Corporate leadership will be arriving later today. I won't be here, Calvin says. Daniel nods. Of course. Calvin gathers his ID and the envelope. Mark steps fully aside, clearing the path. As Calvin turns toward the exit, Daniel speaks once more. This will be addressed. It should be, Calvin replies. He walks toward the doors. Customers lower their phones. Eye contact is avoided. What moments earlier felt like authority now feels like exposure. Behind the counter, Rachel stands frozen, staring at the terminal, finally understanding what her decision has set in motion and what it is about to cost her. By the time Calvin Mercer exits the building, the atmosphere inside Redwood Federal Savings has shifted completely. The branch is still open, but nothing about it feels normal. Daniel Reeves remains behind the counter long after the doors close, staring forward without blinking. His phone vibrates. He looks down, answers, and says only one word, yes. He hangs up and turns to Rachel. Log out of your terminal, she looks up sharply. Why? Now, Daniel says. Rachel logs out. Daniel signs in under his own credentials and takes control of the station. He does not tell her to leave. He does not tell her to stay. She remains standing nearby, hands at her sides, unsure what to do with them. Daniel turns to Mark. Return to the entrance, he instructs. Do not engage unless requested. Mark nods and steps away. The authority he carried earlier has evaporated. Within 45 minutes, 2 senior compliance officers arrive from corporate headquarters. They do not stop at the teller line. They do not acknowledge customers. They walk straight into the back offices. Daniel follows and closes the door behind them. The branch remains operational, but all large transactions are quietly halted. Tellers redirect customers with rehearsed phrases. Conversations are kept brief. Inside the back office, the footage is already playing. The compliance officers watch silently as the bodycam and lobby cameras capture the interaction from multiple angles. They rewind, pause, play again. They watch Rachel refuse the deposit. They watch security step in without citation. They watch Daniel escalate without referencing a specific policy. One officer takes notes. Any prior complaints? One asks. Yes, Daniel replies. 3, similar nature. Yes, why weren't they addressed? Daniel doesn't answer. The footage continues. No one raises their voice. No policy is clearly stated. No threat is justified. By the end of the day, Rachel Monroe is placed on administrative leave. Her access badge is collected before she leaves the building. She is instructed not to return until contacted by Human Resources. Mark Delgado's security firm receives formal notice that evening. Their contract with Redwood Federal is under review. Daniel Reeves is placed on leave pending investigation. His authority over the branch is suspended. An interim manager is assigned within 48 hours. That same night, corporate legal issues an internal directive. All branches are ordered to review large cash deposit procedures. Mandatory bias training is scheduled. Compliance oversight is expanded. Performance bonuses tied to branch metrics are frozen. None of it is announced publicly. 3 days later, Calvin Mercer deposits the same cash, $185,000, at a different Redwood Federal location. The transaction takes less than 5 minutes. His ID is checked once. Documentation is reviewed. No security is involved. No manager intervenes. The original branch closes the following week for what is officially described as a systems review. Internally, the incident is logged as a failure of procedure and judgment. Externally, there is no statement, no apology, no press release. Calvin does not request one. At the next board meeting, the incident is referenced briefly. Names are not spoken aloud. The footage is shown. The discussion is short. Policies are updated. Authority is clarified. The bank moves on. For Rachel Monroe, the decision made at Teller Station 4 ends her career at Redwood Federal Savings. For Daniel Reeves, it ends his position there. For Mark Delgado, it ends his firm's relationship with the institution. For Calvin Mercer, it confirms something he already understood. He never needed to raise his voice. He never needed to explain who he was. The system revealed itself the moment it decided he didn't belong. The days following the incident pass quietly on the surface, but inside Redwood Federal Savings, the damage continues to spread. Internal emails circulate with carefully chosen language. Phrases like procedural deviation, risk exposure, and reputational sensitivity replace what actually happened at teller station 4. Employees are instructed not to discuss the matter. Rachel Monroe spends her first morning on administrative leave sitting at her kitchen table, refreshing her email. None arrive. Her access to internal systems has already been revoked. Her badge, collected without ceremony, lies in her purse like an accusation she cannot put down. For nearly a decade, Redwood Federal had been her routine. She believed rules protected the institution and, by extension, her position within it. Every decision she made that morning, she tells herself, followed instinct shaped by years of reinforcement. No one ever corrected her before. By midweek, Human Resources contacts her. The meeting is virtual. Two faces appear on her screen, both unfamiliar. Their questions are neutral, their tone is not. Can you explain why you escalated the transaction without citing a specific policy? Rachel answers defensively. Large cash deposits are risky. Which policy applies? One asks. Rachel pauses. I believed it warranted security involvement. Based on what criteria? Rachel struggles to articulate it. She references discomfort. She references intuition. She references experience. None of it is written down. Meanwhile, Daniel Reeves receives a similar call, though his is shorter. His responsibilities as branch manager are formally suspended. He is instructed not to contact staff. Daniel had always seen himself as a buffer, someone who smoothed conflict rather than caused it. But the footage tells a different story, one where hesitation replaces leadership, one where authority is exercised without clarity. He replays the moment in his mind when Calvin Mercer asked for the policy. He never answered because he couldn't. At corporate headquarters, compliance finalizes its review. The conclusion is carefully worded, no evidence of malicious intent, but clear evidence of biased decision-making and procedural failure. Legal advises silence. No statements, no admissions, no reversals. The institution's priority is containment. Calvin Mercer, for his part, resumes his schedule without interruption. Meetings continue, calls are returned. The incident becomes a reference point, not a wound. He does not contact the bank again. He does not file a complaint. He knows the review is already underway. What matters more to him is not punishment, but exposure. The footage does that on its own. Inside Redwood Federal, staff training sessions are rescheduled and rebranded. Attendance is mandatory. Slides emphasize neutrality, risk mitigation, equal application of policy, but among employees, the message is understood differently. The rules did not change, the visibility did. Employees now know that power can stand quietly at the counter, say very little, and still append an entire branch. What unsettles them most is not who Calvin Mercer turned out to be, but how differently the interaction would have ended if he were not. The system corrected itself only after recognizing him. That realization lingers. 2 weeks after the incident, Redwood Federal Savings appears outwardly unchanged. The logo is the same. The branch hours are the same. Customers continue lining up at counters that look no different than before. Internally, however, the shift is permanent. An interim manager, Elaine Porter, takes control of the Cleveland branch. Her arrival is deliberate and quiet. She does not hold a staff meeting on day one, she observes instead. She watches how tellers greet customers, how questions are asked, how long identification is held, where eyes linger. Every interaction is now documented. Daniel Reeves is formally removed from his position before the end of the month. The notice is brief. It cites failure to exercise managerial judgment consistent with institutional standards. No further explanation is given. His employment file is sealed. His career at Redwood Federal ends without ceremony. Rachel Monroe receives her final notice shortly after. The letter thanks her for her years of service. It informs her that her employment is terminated effective immediately. No mention is made of intent. No accusation is written plainly, only language about loss of confidence and misalignment with institutional values. She reads it 3 times. The bank offers no appeal. Mark Delgado's security firm is officially dropped from Redwood Federal's vendor list. The termination email references risk exposure and escalation concerns. No one from corporate speaks to Mark directly. His contract simply ends. Inside compliance, the case is closed. The incident is categorized, indexed, and archived. It becomes a training reference, an anonymized example shown without names, without context beyond what policy requires. What is never shown is the moment Rachel turned the ID face down. What is never labeled is why the situation escalated before any rule was broken. At headquarters, the board reviews the final summary. The footage is played once more. The discussion lasts less than 10 minutes. One director asks whether any regulatory risk remains. Legal says no. Another asks whether the shareholder involved intends to pursue the matter. Legal says he has not responded. That is enough. The board moves on. Calvin Mercer does not attend that meeting. He does not need to. His absence is its own signal. Weeks later, he visits the Cleveland branch once more, not as a customer, but as an observer. He stands near the entrance for a moment, watching transactions proceed uninterrupted. No one recognizes him. That, more than anything, confirms his conclusion. The system does not see people, it sees categories. The correction only comes when the category breaks. He leaves without speaking to anyone. Behind the counter, procedures are followed flawlessly. The incident at Redwood Federal Savings never becomes public. There is no headline. No viral clip, no external investigation. To the outside world, nothing happened at Teller Station 4. Inside the institution, however, the moment is never fully forgotten. Policies are updated quietly. Language is refined. Training modules are adjusted to emphasize neutrality and consistency. Managers are instructed to document every deviation, every escalation, every instance where instinct overrides written procedure. What is never written is the reason these changes were necessary. Rachel Monroe does not find another position in retail banking. Potential employers cite her recent separation and move on. She tells herself the system turned on her unfairly. She never names the moment when she could have stopped the escalation. In her version, the bank failed her first. Daniel Reeves takes a consulting role months later. It pays less. His title is smaller. He avoids discussing Redwood Federal altogether. When asked about leadership under pressure, he speaks in generalities. Mark Delgado's firm absorbs the loss but never regains the contract volume it once had. Risk-sensitive institutions quietly remove them from bid lists. Escalation, once rewarded, becomes a liability. Calvin Mercer continues his work as before. He never files a complaint. He never asks for restitution. He never speaks publicly about the incident. At the next annual shareholder briefing, Redwood Federal's leadership discusses organizational resilience. Slides highlight improved oversight and procedural clarity. Applause follows. Calvin listens. He understands what is being celebrated. The institution believes it corrected an error. He knows it merely revealed itself. What happened at the counter was not about money or policy or compliance. It was about who was assumed to belong and who was treated as an anomaly until proven otherwise. No voices were raised. No laws were broken. That is why it matters. The system worked exactly as designed until it recognized power standing quietly in front of it, and only then did it adjust. This is Voices Unchained. If this story unsettled you, share it with someone who needs to see how easily routine becomes judgment. Subscribe for more stories like this, and tell us in the comments what should have happened the moment he asked for the policy.